What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of Roster Locked, a best ball show over on the RotoViz YouTube channel. If you're joining us right now, feel free to go ahead and click that subscribe button. We're almost at 200 followers. It's kind of been fun to watch that climb over the last couple of months. So thanks to all those who are subscribing. If you haven't done so yet, feel free to do so. We are pulling back-to-back shows tonight. Last night, we did the Draft Sharks Invitational with Cody Carpentier of Roto Underworld. Tonight, we're running it back with none other than Lord Reebs himself, Rich Hribar of Sharp Football Analysis. Obviously, you know Rich. He's a super sharp mind, produces killer content, awesome guy to have in the fantasy community. On Twitter, you can always find interacting with people. So tonight, Reebs is joining me for an Underdog Fantasy Best Ball Mania 2 draft. Rich, how's it going?
Zach, man, what's going on? I'm glad we can make this happen. We tried a couple, throw a couple dates out, so I know that everyone's watching kind of these two preseason games. So come and join us. We'll watch some preseason. We'll just talk about some things that are going on. We'll draft in the Puppy 2, which is going to be full by tomorrow. They said it's going to be basically this is it. Get in. Congrats to Underdog for running two successful tournaments this summer. Maybe we'll sneak in the 11th hour here with a winner.
Yeah, no, actually, the Puppy 2 filled. We're going to go right to Best Ball Mania 2.
I was wrong.
You were right. I thought that we were going to be able to get in Best Ball, I thought we were going to be able to get in a Puppy 2 just before it closed. But I mean, like you said, Underdog been killing it with this, with these tournaments they've been running. Best Ball Mania 2, still a lot of spots available. If you're interested in drafting, with Rich and I tonight, we're going to be getting in here in just a second. But before we do that, Reebs, what's been going on? I know you got a lot of content going on over at Sharp Football Analysis right now. Every day you're posting something different. What are you kind of, grinding out these next couple of weeks in lieu of the season starting?
Yeah, we're right here, man, rounding third base. Obviously we got these preseason games going. We're basically, 4 weeks from tonight, we're going to have that first Thursday night game. Basically everything is kind of shifted towards kind of like the subscribers and members. But, I do have over 75 free articles up on the site you can check out over the course of the offseason. But yeah, I've basically been laying out my whole draft plans this week. Next week I'll be doing running like a Stats That Matter a series that goes for each position. I'll be doing a How We Are ADP series, which I kind of always relitigate every year just to see how much we've gotten better at ADP, which honestly, since I've been doing this article, we have consistently as a community gotten better at setting ADP every single year. The correlation continues to rise. So that just speaks to the volumes of just information and how big fantasy football has gotten and how serious people play fantasy football now and analyze it, that, we are become a lot more accurate over the years and continue to climb in accuracy and prognosticating a game that has a ton of variance.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I know that I've turned into a couple of the ship chasing shows as well, and they seem to be talking regularly about the efficiency of the drafts that are taking place in Underdog alone, where they've been doing a lot of that. So yeah, I mean,
I've never seen anything like what happened at Underdog this offseason. In all my years doing this, I've never seen, because there's been, Sean obviously wrote Anti-Fragility in 2013, I want to say.
Yep.
We've had guys like, Matt Waldman do like the reverse drafting and stuff like that. And when 2016, after we had this like the running back position fall out, we had wide receivers rise. But I've never just seen a manipulation of just like we're collectively just a site drafted went in and drafted this way, where just everything changed on a dime, and literally just wide receiver ADP just went absolutely bananas. It was crazy. I've never seen anything like this, and it's exclusive to Underdog. It really has not affected FFPC drafts, like really have not moved. It's just this one, these drafts in the puppies and the best ball manias, but Underdog ADP, like these drafts have been super sharp. I've never seen anything like it though, where it's like a collective switch was flipped and just people started drafting one way.
Oh yeah, and I think too, when we talk about Underdog and just the overall success of Underdog too, like you talk about just how easy it is to get into drafts and to get that repetition in. So I think efficient drafting really just builds off of rapid repetition that these people are doing with these drafts. It's got such a huge following. People can constantly look back. They can check their mistakes of their drafts and immediately go back in another draft if they want to at a relatively low cost, just to kind of keep on hammering out their process and figure out what they want to do, which I think has really led to, like you said, more efficient drafting on Underdog compared to some of the other sites. I've done a handful of FFPC drafts this year, some tournament teams, and they are still loving the running back position over there. So there's a lot of stark differences between the two as far as that goes. So, we could be in for tonight in terms of some difficult competition with some of these savvy drafters. over on Underdog and the Best Ball Mania 2. But before we get into that, we will in just a moment here. Like you said, there are some preseason games on right now. We have the Patriots and the football team, and then we also have the Eagles and the Steelers going on. With about a week and a half, 2 weeks of training camp underway so far, is there anything that's been standing out to you in terms of any players that have jumped out to you who you're targeting in drafts right now? Any offenses that maybe you're a little bit higher on based on camp reports or lower on than maybe you were before the start of training camp?
Well, even from my background of days of working at Roto World, I mean, being able to kind of filter through the news this time of year is a trait of itself. Obviously you don't want to run overboard on things that are opinion based. Like the other day we had the report that Jamar Chase wasn't separating in camp. Like that stuff you got to throw out the window. Like that's one beat reporter, that's an opinion, it's not rooted in any fact. You want to kind of glom onto things that are actually reporting, things that are going on in the field. And I kind of grain of salt these things from camps, because a lot of these beat guys, and they're excellent at their jobs, but a lot of these guys don't have skin in the game. They don't do projections, they don't understand distribution of touches, so they could you could say certain things. So I like to use these, period. We didn't have any games last year.
Right.
But I like to see these situations. So you talk about the football team is on, right? They've been talking about Antonio Gibson's role this whole offseason, right? So let's see some third downs. Let me see the first 3rd and 8 that Washington has. Is he in the game? Is he coming out for J.D. McKissick? Things like that, or we want to look at. There are some situations I absolutely want to see, like this Jaguars team. I have no idea what they're going to do, man. Like, is it going to be more of an Urban Meyer imprint? Is it going to be a Schottenheimer and Darrell Bevel thing where they've got the background of, play action and deep shot passing? Where does that kind of merge? Where do these pieces fit in? I mean, they've got a lot of pieces we're interested. James Robinson came out of kind of nowhere last year and popped. They drafted Travis Etienne, a guy who's very Alvin Kamara-ish in terms of profile. They've got receivers we care about, and they've got really no tight end. But I want to see how these pieces fit in. How are they playing? Obviously the one team we've got to see twice now between 3 games is the Steelers, and they very much hinted opening up that they are going to ride Najee Harris. Like, we were seeing a lot of touches for him early. But the one thing I think that's interesting about the Pittsburgh Steelers, what we've seen so far through the Hall of Fame game and just this quarter tonight, is that everyone has been, ramrodding the narrative of the Steelers' offensive line is a problem, right? The Steelers have a bad offensive line. This is going to be a problem. But one thing we've seen the Steelers consistently do to open up the preseason is they're running a ton of motion, pre-snap motion. And if you have, a deficiency like they do in their offensive line and they're aware of it, they're finding ways to now, they're showing you, like, we know our offensive line's not great, so what if we can freeze the defense for a little bit? What can we do to make our offensive line better? And these are things they weren't doing at the end of the Randy Fichtner era last season when it was a problem and they had to just play one brand of football. So just seeing the Steelers already kind of make an adjustment and say, like, yeah, they're going to do some things to help their offensive line. Does that mean they're going to be an excellent offensive line? Absolutely not. But you can see that they're cognizant of it and that, they're going to do some things that are smart and intelligent to put some lipstick on the pig in terms of making this offensive line a little better than we objectively think it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, those are all really great points. You are a very detailed observer of the game. I'm still working and sometimes noticing some of those things. So I will be keeping an eye out for, like you said, those motions and those pre-snap reads before the start of the plays, just to kind of be more mindful of what teams are doing to help themselves out. You bring up some really good points with Urban Meyer and just that depth chart and how we're going to see it shape out. I was shocked to hear you didn't consider Tim Tebow a tight end of note. You said they have no tight end. They do have Tim Tebow. He may be someone who ends up doing more than we expect him to do. So
yeah, no, he might. Man, listen, let's not put it past anybody.
Yeah, I mean, Meyer's so beholden to Tebow. It wouldn't shock me at all to find out that Tim Tebow was a tight end one, and we just watch it be like a brutal experiment for a couple of weeks before we realize it's not actually going to work. So you never know what's going to happen there. But we'll continue to talk in a second. If you guys are tuning in, we're going to go ahead and get in a Best Ball Mania 2 draft here with Lord Reeves of Short Football Analysis. We are going to be doing the Underdog Fantasy Best Ball Mania 2 tournament. If you're tuning in, go ahead and jump it now. We'll hopefully have this thing fill up pretty quickly. But did you get a chance to check out any of the preseason game that's taking place right now before we hopped on here?
I've got Washington and New England on in the background. I obviously don't want to ignore you, so I am, just have it just kind of glancing at things right now. But Washington started the game off with a nice punt on 4th and 1 from the Patriots 41-yard line. So that reminded me football's back.
Yep. You love to see them playing it safe early. You don't wait too long to play it safe. Go ahead and do
in
it
the
early
exhibition game.
Right.
Yeah, when you think you want to get your team in some situational football and practice that. No.
Exactly. Cody just asked, are we in the slow draft? I don't think we're in the slow draft. I didn't.
Let's hope not.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a long show.
Yeah, I know. We're trying to get us out of here at a decent time to maybe catch the back half of some games. Let me go. I'm gonna back out here real quick just to make
the
sure.
Mac Jones life. I assume Mac's probably not far off from coming into this game.
Yeah, I saw Cam Newton got sacked for a fumble, and he ended up losing it. Or actually, he lost the fumble, but they got it back, and then Washington got the ball back. And then after that, we hopped on here. So I haven't gotten to catch too much of it. I'll be checking out some of the highlights later on, and at least doing some box scores.
Yeah, I saw Shane in the comments in the chat talked about Gibson being taken out of the game. So those are like two major fulcrum points, I think, of where drafts are right now. Is Antonio Gibson going to actually get that pass catching role, and will Austin Eckler get goal line carries? Those are two of the biggest things, I think, in terms of where these two running back ADPs are, because these are guys that have top 5 upside if that role is unlocked for each. But both are still kind of more wishful thinking. I mean, there's a big contingency that loves Austin Eckler, and I love him too. But if Austin Eckler's the guy that's going to have 6 touchdowns, he's going to have a hard time getting there. Even you can go back 2 years ago when he had the 9 touchdowns. You just can't roll over those 8 receiving touchdowns, man. And only I think 4 of them were outside the red zone for a running back. That's tough to repeat. And then you see that regression kind of come in last year, even when he's on the field. So we do want Austin Eckler to get those goal line carries. So, the same thing with Gibson. We need this role to be fully unlocked for him to have the upside, because people are hammering. You take him in the second round. They're all about it, so.
Oh, yeah.
Those are two big kind of preseason things to kind of monitor.
Yeah, for sure. I was listening to a Good Football show the other day, and they had also made a point. It was the show with Sean and Gretsch, so it just came out the other day. And I think they had made a point. Maybe it was Denny Carter. Forgive me for not completely remembering, but I like the logic of the argument for Gibson in that even if he doesn't completely cede, or even if J.D. McKissic doesn't completely cede the third down role over to Antonio Gibson, there's a potential path there where Gibson sees more work on third down than he did last year, which could still make him worth the value if he also improves as a runner over the course of the season. So I think that's kind of interesting. We get very hung up, I think, at least I personally have, until I kind of took a step back after listening to that podcast the other day where they talked about that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Maybe my Gibson picks won't be a complete waste, even if he doesn't get that bona fide third down role, as long as he's still seeing enough work that we can say this is an improvement over year one, and he's getting enough receiving work to still make himself worth that pick. Then Gibson could still work out, even if J.D. McKissic is still sometimes a thorn in our side. If anything, I think that you have to be mindful of maybe keep an eye out on some of these preseason games too when it comes to this particular backfield, of just seeing, is J.D. McKissic going to see enough look in the preseason where we decide that maybe his ADP is actually at a value before the crowd jumps onto it, maybe starts taking him around the 2 earlier than they are. Because in a PPR league, getting some of those late round backs, particularly in a RotoViz 0 RB build, you like having those guys, at the values where you can get them at. So, it'll be fun to watch what Antonio Gibson does. I know he had a couple decent runs early on in the game. But we are officially in the draft here, Reeves. We're going at the 102. I don't think we could even talk about going 0 RB here. I'm a little disappointed. You tweeted earlier today you convinced Zach to take a running back. I think I'd be silly not to. So picking out of the 102, we're going to be starting here in just under 30 seconds. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in here. Obviously, if McCaffrey falls to us at the 102, we take him. Is there a particular player who you love at the 102 who you're taking more than another? Or how are you trying to balance the exposures that you're getting from these earlier picks where, you kind of want a little bit of everybody if you're drafting enough, but is there a guy who you're just completely convicted on where you're taking him at 102 or 103 no matter what?
No, I've been mixing it up at 103 a lot. I think that's kind of the first fulcrum point of the draft. A lot of people have their different flavors. Some people like Zeke. Some people still like Kamara, especially after the Thomas injury. Some people still like the big dog, Derrick Henry. There are a lot of options there. So I've tried to mix it around because, you never know when you're going to get these picks. Sometimes you have a hot run where you're getting 103, 104, and you're just like, oh, well, I'll keep hammering the guy I want to take. And then all of a sudden you run cold and you get a bunch of picks 7 through 12. Exactly. So I do try to mix it up. 1 and 2, are pretty tough to go against the grain, to not have, it be CMC and then Dalvin. But I even think 103 is a spot where people can even consider going wide receiver in their managed leagues. You could do it in best ball too, but I still think listen, me and you have talked in the chat a little bit. I am in a little bit of a throwback that always been a hyper fragile modified zero RB guy before there was even a moniker for it. That's just how I always drafted. Like I love the pursuit of having the positional leverage of what an elite running back provides. It's the one thing that really can't be arbitraged. There are only a couple each year, and typically if you follow ADP, like you have to pay for these guys to get them. So it's a pay-to-play spot for an elite running back. And then I like to swerve into kind of like, the benefits of what still a zero RB can give you the rest of the way out, especially in these best balls. So us being 102 kind of fell into what, I probably would have tried to nudge you towards anyways, but so it worked out by default. But I do think in managed leagues this year, as opposed to a lot of recent years, this is the most uncertainty I think we've had about guys in the first round, especially 2 picks in. 2 picks in the draft. I feel like it's Christian McCaffrey, and you can start putting red on everyone's ledger. Even Dalvin Cook has not played a full season yet, and he's got that shoulder injury that a lot of people believe that is going to be a thing he's going to play with for his career. Zeke's coming off the worst year of his career. Do they get Tony Pollard more involved? I mean, I'm still very high on Zeke. I'm just playing devil's advocate on these guys.
Sure.
Derrick Henry's coming off 2,000-yard season and 17 touchdowns and still couldn't even be the highest scoring running back. Alvin Kamara loses Drew Brees. He obviously ran super hot in touchdown department. Everyone got that Christmas gift. He's not going to score 20 touchdowns again. Saquon's got the ACL injury. Aaron Jones, do we have any idea? I love Aaron Jones, the player, but man, there is still like a piece of the tiny back of my brain that's like, what if, like, it doesn't take a lot for these coaching staff to say we have a 240-pound guy. Like, what if we just start using him at the goal line? And
the
Aaron
Derrick
Jones
Henry light.
You know what I mean? So it's like you can start putting red on all these running backs ledgers where you didn't have to go you would get deeper into drafts in recent years and be confident about your picks. This year, I think you can easily pivot and go wide receiver, like I said, even as early as 103, and start mixing in a guy like Devontae Adams or even Diggs. So I believe it's just a lot more safety, even if they don't kind of return where they were last year, because both of those guys probably have a little bit of regression kind of cooked in too from a team perspective as well. But those guys aren't going to bottom out, man. Like their roles are safe and legit. So I mean, this season offers a lot of variance this year. I think there's a lot of ways to draft your managed teams this final month. That's a long-winded way for me to get there, but it's fun for fantasy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. My brain has been zeroing in on best ball since March, and now I'm starting to think about a couple of the redraft leagues I have coming up, and a lot of the points you just raised are points that I'm starting to think about as well as I get ready for redraft season. In particular, like you said, with these running backs, like I've been asking myself, like, is the case for zero RB perhaps even safer if you consider, like you said, some of these red dots on some of these running backs where you really could go something like wide receiver or one of those elite tight ends, maybe a little bit earlier than you would have otherwise considered, just because the question marks that surround some of these elite running backs at the top are, they're very real. Like even the Dalvin Cook injury, we love the production, we love everything he's done for us over the last couple seasons, but never played a full season, and the shoulder injury is definitely a concern.
Other thing this year too is the second round allows you to come back if you want to start receiver. You can still get good running backs that have that upside in the second round this year. We talked about a guy like Gibson if he gets that role. Joe Mixon, it goes in the second round. People hate Joe Mixon for some reason because obviously I know the reason why they hate him, but it's a silly reason. Clyde Edwards-Helaire just goes like you can make a case to go wide receiver because you can still get good running backs to sell yourself on in the second round this year.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. All right. We are coming up here in about 10 seconds or so. Anybody who's standing out to you, would you consider doing a running back here? We have 30 seconds to kind of hammer this thing out.
I would say from this spot with us coming up, I would buy the dip on Darren Waller because then we don't have to, especially in these best balls. I do like to go tight end early because they've just been so advantageous in the front. Nothing's really changed for Waller. The wide receivers still aren't upgraded. They're counting on those guys to take a step forward. He was first in the NFL in target share among tight ends last year. The thing I love, a stat that I love, is yards per team pass attempt. It's very sticky. It actually it correlates more to predictive fantasy points than even targets does the year before targets. So it's one of my favorite stats. And Darren Waller's been a standout there the past 2 years. I know we're going to come back here quick. So.
Yeah, I know we're on the turn here, so we got to get some guys in here real quickly. I just queued up some wide receivers here. Running back, we have DeAndre Swift down here, Miles Sanders. I'm not really interested in any of these backs. I'd probably be looking at one of these wide receivers I have queued up. My default, I do think, would be Keenan Allen. Are you more into one of these guys over Allen?
Yeah, I have McLaurin higher, but I don't mind the argument for in this tier of Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, and McLaurin because Keenan Allen is obviously the most safety in terms of quarterback and offense. So it's real easy to break a tie that way. Yeah. He's another guy that probably has a little bit of touchdown regression still coming in. He's got some weird splits when Austin Eckler played and didn't play last year too. But he also is a guy that has only DeAndre Hopkins and Michael Thomas have more receptions than Keenan Allen in the last 4 years. So even if you take that isolated incident from 2020 and say touchdowns are going to come down, maybe these weird splits, he still has a 4-year resume of just being like a complete target magnet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I went ahead and I went Terry McLaurin here, Reeves. I try to draft, cater it to a little bit of my guests because I can draft these teams anytime I want to. I bring on guests to learn a little bit of something. I bring on guests to try to, make sure we're getting guys that they like and we can talk a little bit about them. So you said Terry McLaurin. I had about 3 seconds left to jam him in there. So we went ahead and went with McLaurin over Allen and over Cooper. McLaurin, I don't know if you saw it, had a nice catch on the very first play of the game today from Ryan Fitzpatrick. I want to say it had about a 15-yard reception. So that was kind of a nice little play to see to start the season here. In terms of when we talk about, drafting in these tournaments in particular, because that just seems to be what everyone's doing on Underdog right now. One thing that I've really been focusing a lot on is obviously stacking, but also trying to be mindful of correlations in terms of how the playoff schedules are shaping up over the course of the Underdog season. My memory is not as sharp as I'd like it to be. I don't completely have all those like week 15 to 17 schedules completely memorized, but when it comes to doing these drafts, how focused are you on the correlation of the playoff schedule? How focused are you even on just maybe trying to correlate, the length of the season for your builds when you're rounding things out?
Yeah, it's something I'm cognizant of if it fits, but I don't try to just wedge in because obviously you have to get to those weeks for it to matter too.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes you get caught really looking ahead and then just not looking at what's in front of you. So as long as the draft dictates it, like a couple things that I think naturally are easy to build is this Falcons-Bills stack. They play in week 17. If you're picking at the turn, you can get Calvin Ridley and Diggs, and you can usually get Pitts when it comes back to you. And then you can get Matt Ryan. You're going to miss out on Josh Allen probably, but you can get Matt Ryan, which is probably the side you want anyways when you get to that point because they'll probably be the team playing catch-up.
Trailing.
Now, you just have to worry when we get to January 2nd, is it going to be snowing in Buffalo? But that's one I've been looking at. Cardinals-Cowboys is another one. Obviously, the Cowboys, everyone has been trying to stack Cowboys, so you do have to do some finagling. And the Cardinals side is hard to stack, too, because you have to go high on Hopkins and Kyler, and it gets a little tricky because then you've got to try to run it back with Lamb and Cooper. Their ADPs kind of overlap. You usually end up with Gallup. No one has a tight end on either of those teams. There's a couple other ones. I think Raiders-Colts could be fun, so keep that in mind for us, although we didn't take JT. Dolphins Titans is another one I always look at because ADP seems to match up. You can get AJ Brown, you can get Tannehill, you can get Julio, you can get Ferkser, you can get Tua, any of the Dolphins receivers real late. Myles Gaskin, ADP really lines up there. That's a good one that I like to look at a lot too. And then we took Dalvin. They play the Packers. And they've had a couple games that shoot out, but that one is in Green Bay too. So might have some bad weather situations on a couple of those that you're looking at. But obviously everyone's chasing that 49er stack, man. People love that 49er stack.
Yes, that's been one I'm high on here. We are on the clock. We have 20 seconds to go.
My bad.
That's all right. I'm going to throw T. Higgins in here real quick just because he's a guy who I like. But is there anyone else you're liking here over the next 15 seconds before we...
So I have Higgins the highest out of every guy that you've scrolled past, even his teammate.
Okay, even Chase. Okay, cool. That's
I have Higgins over Chase.
Okay, cool. So I'm absolutely good with that. We'll get the second pick in here. I was just going to say that's another one that I've been eyeing up too in terms of we're talking week 17 in particular.
The Chiefs Bengals.
Chiefs Bengals. Yeah, you're probably not going to get Tyreek Hill and Kelsey necessarily, but if you like any of those ancillary pieces on the Chiefs offense in terms of wide receiver, you can probably make that happen. Now, where do we want to go with this pick here? We've got...
I think with this pick, with having Dalvin, I think that we don't have Justin Jefferson, but I think we go Thielen and we can try to kind of get this, Captain Kirk because he's kind of toxic right now. We can try to land Kirk later, and then so having Dalvin, having Thielen, and not having Jefferson, but if we have Kirk Cousins, we still get to arbitrage some of Justin Jefferson's points too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. For sure. And even Irv Smith. I mean,
love Irv.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you this. I did the Draft Sharks Invitational last night. I got stuck with Irv Smith in the 7th round, which was definitely early. I timed out, so I'm still learning this thing, Reeves. I guess I timed out on Draft Sharks Invitational. Very embarrassing. I don't know if I'll ever recover from it, but nonetheless, I did get Irv Smith, and I got him around early. I actually don't feel horrible about it. And the camp reports have been coming out on Irv. Zimmer early on so that his role wasn't going to change, but the reality is Irv Smith was on the field a pretty good amount last season, and the Vikings, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, ran a decent amount of 2 tight end formations, and Irv Smith was, used kind of all over the field. So for his role not changing, I think that Irv Smith's role not changing could really just mean he's going to be on the field a hell of a lot. He's going to be targeted by Kirk Cousins, hopefully a decent amount. And if you want to talk about tight end value, I think he's a pretty decent buy at ADP right now. There's no conflict as far as the bye weeks for a 2 tight end build, which we'd be looking to do in this draft in particular. So if we wanted to even try to round out an Irv Smith stat later on and really get Vikings heavy, that's something that we could look to do here. But real quick, just for those of you who may be checking out this, see the first couple of picks, we're doing a Best Ball Mania 2 draft with Lord Reeb tonight. We started out the 102. We got Dalvin Cook. We went Terry McLaurin, T. Higgins, Adam Thielen, and then we have Darren Waller as a tight end. This is looking a lot like how I try to build it out. I've really been trying to secure a lot of the early round tight ends. Waller probably dipped a little bit because of this whole he's not practicing thing. He's got this supposedly mythological injury where they're not really saying what's wrong with him, but he's not practicing. I don't really know what the deal is there.
He supposedly wants a new contract too.
That's what I saw. So I'm really hoping it's that, and I'm hoping they can come to some kind of resolution and that he's actually healthy. The fact that we didn't get any reports on Waller being injured before he just mystically became injured and all of a sudden isn't playing probably bodes pretty well for us in general. So I think the Waller pick is fine here. One question.
Also, it is August 12th. Like people we have been really overreacting to stuff this year more than I can remember any other years. And we typically do overreact a lot as a community, but this year, man, the oscillation of stuff has been crazy. Like people, we ran this 2-week course with Jonathan Taylor and the Colts. Things are coming back. Saquon, we knew Saquon wasn't going to open at camp like being 100%, and people just freaked out. He was going in like the second in my Draft Sharks Invitational draft. He went in the 3rd round.
Okay.
And I was tilting like so bad because I wasn't like anywhere near it. But it's there's been a lot of overreactions. It is August 12th. Like there's 4 weeks till the season. Like it is okay. Like we don't have to go crazy, man. To the 9th degree on all these guys with a hammy or something. Like there's time.
One injury, and this is just a one in the chat real quickly. We're gonna have to pick here in a second, so we can kind of answer this between picks, but. Someone did ask, is it over, or it is over for Bateman shares, right? Rashad Bateman went down with a groin injury a few days ago. Now it's announced that he's going to have surgery and hopefully be back in a couple of weeks. Are you out on Bateman at this point in time? Obviously, his current ADP is probably going to dip, and we'll probably spot it here in the draft. But what are you doing with Rashad Bateman? Let's make this pick, and then we can talk about that. Let's make
all right, yeah.
All right. We got our three
Where's
wide receiver
our
build.
wide receiver queue here?
Yeah, let's kill the rest of these real quick here. We're looking at Cortland Sutton. Who should I slide in here real quickly?
Well, we could grab our quarterback if we want now.
Yeah. Some of these guys have actually slipped a little bit. Would you be wanting Dak or Kyler? Both of them are bad.
I have Kyler a little ahead of him. So let's take Kyler. And just because, there's no obviously health concerns around, not just Dak's shoulder, but also the ankle. Does the ankle have anything lingering as well this year? Is he going to run as much? Remember, Kyler was, midway until his shoulder got hurt last year. He was averaging almost 30 points a game. Was in the mix for being an MVP. They get, I think that's the move.
16 picks after ADP is crazy too. I didn't realize
I think we take that, and then if I can twist your arm at a receiver here, I don't think I have to twist your arm at a receiver. I am actually a big proponent of Devontae Smith, man.
Devontae Smith. Okay. We'll make that pick. I'll take your word for it. I've not drafted a lot of Devontae Smith. I know that I believe he has a knee sprain right now, so that kind of
he's got the MCL, but it's the same injury Nick Chubb had. So it's the same injury Nick Chubb had last year. If you remember, Nick Chubb just came back and was fine, right? And he's a running back.
I think last season, correct?
So, he was all right. So, but the other reason I like taking Devontae Smith is I think he's priced round his floor, even if Hurts plays. And remember, Hurts led the NFL in ADOT last year. Like, he's going to push the ball. But also, what if just what if? I know it's narrative street, but this is what happens when we're trying to win these big tournaments. What if they do trade for Deshaun Watson and he plays the back half of 2020 or 2021? I'm sorry. What if that happens? Just what if it happens?
It's going to mean a lot for every Eagles pass catcher you have on that offense.
I feel like that isn't really priced into Devontae Smith's ADP right now, which is fine because it's a hypothetical. But in these situations, like where we're trying to win this thing, we're drafting a team that's just like, if that were to happen, because remember, rookie wide receivers are typically a slower burn and they ramp up as the season goes on in the back half of the year. They smash. And Devontae Smith is in that, archetype. He's a productive player. Not even just what he did last year in the Heisman year, which was definitely influenced by Jalen Waddle's injury, but just go back 2 years ago when he played with 3 other wide receivers that were taken in the top 15 picks. Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs, and he was the leading receiver on that team. So this dude can play. So you get a little bit of upside naturally. Hurts gives him the deep ball ability, and then you have like the added, if this were to happen, this pie in the sky, final 8 weeks with Deshaun Watson. I like mixing that in.
Yeah, and I think too, your case for mixing it in, I think, is only strengthened by the other argument that you made, which you think that he is kind of being priced at I think you said his floor, correct? So he's being priced at his floor. So you feel safe about the pick either way. And if you feel like he is being priced at his floor, then we understand that the sky is probably close to the limit if Deshaun Watson does happen to, join us on this walk down narrative street, land in Philadelphia, and effectively raise the ceiling of all of these wide receivers. So I really like that point a lot. What were your actual thoughts on the Bateman shares right now in terms of his ADP? We're not taking his ADP now.
Bateman was already a little rich for me, just because of I was okay in these best balls, but I think he's gonna be he was a really tough pick as like a wide receiver 48, wide receiver 50 in these managed leagues, which still is going in because I think there's touchdown equity to be had in this Baltimore Ravens offense, but I still don't see a ton of volume, a ton of weekly stability. I will say that this injury does put him like kind of behind the 8 ball, but I don't think you have to be fully out. Especially it depends if he sinks. You would ideally want to have your league to have an IR spot to put him on, though. If you do take him, if you're managed league, you want to be able to put him on because remember that the waiver's the hottest early on. You'll be able to churn some of your roster, so you definitely don't want a guy that you're gonna have to wait on. But if you were drafting Rashad Bateman in a seasonal league, anyways, you're not really drafting him as a starting wide receiver, anyways, right? Like you're waiting to feel this thing out, see how it goes. And then kind of, if he ramps up, you've got this guy as a starter. So I'm not really completely out because of, I counted him as a guy that would need ramp up and be a bench player anyways. But ideally, you would want to only select him now in spots where you have an IR spot to put him on because you're going to need those roster spots early in the season. People don't value roster spots enough, man. I'm someone that loves to maximize his weekly roster in managed leagues. So the roster spots are value. They hold a lot of value for me.
A couple of years ago, we're gonna make a picture, but real quick. A couple of years ago, I was doing my buddy did a work league, and he wanted me to co-manage with him, so I did it. We exited the draft 2 years in a row with no kicker, just for the sheer fact that we can pick one up and try to start him if we need to on like a Sunday night or Monday night game. We're gonna realize if we have a shot. So that's one way. Like I truly love trying to maximize roster spots as well. If it looks like an otherwise meaningless position, I know no position is truly meaningless, but for a position where I think I can probably plug in one of any 4 kickers over a Sunday night or Monday night game, having that extra bench player filled with an actual position who could have a lot of upside, I think is great strategy. We are on the clock. We got 23 seconds here. Anyone standing out to these wide receiver running back spots? I'm assuming we're not going quarterback or tight end right now.
Yeah, I would say no. I would say out of those guys, I mean, we can get Pittman, and he runs the Waller Week 17 correlation back with Waller if that game ends up shooting out.
Yep. It might be a little there.
We're still,
do you want Carter?
What's
we're
that?
Going to time out here. I apologize. We're going to time out, I think. So, shoot. I shouldn't take him out of there. We just got Jalen Hurts by mistake. My bad.
All right. Well, listen, we have Devontae and we have McLaurin, so that doesn't kill us.
It's a stack that we didn't want, but all right.
It's a stack and a game stack in Week 17 with McLaurin.
It is. What happened was I saw that Michael Pittman's ADP would probably let us take one of those other running backs, so I thought we were going to go.
I'm sorry.
One of those running backs. So that was my bad, though.
You're smart. No, that was a smart. It was the absolutely correct call too.
I should have kept him in there, but we'll go Pittman here. We still have our one running back up top, so I'm fine with that. Are we working a modified zero RB or a hero RB strategy, Reeves? What do you like to call it? That's a hot debate on Twitter as we.
I mean, I don't really care
know.
about the moniker. This is probably more of like, what you would define like a hero RB, where we're just gonna try to throw guys at the RB2 spot. Typically, so in a snake draft at this approach, because it is one of my favorite approaches. Obviously, we wouldn't have two quarterbacks either in a snake draft at this point.
No, we would not.
But
this is probably
I start to. So when I
QBs.
come back and start to look to throw guys at the RB2 position in these, when I build these anchor RB builds or modify whatever moniker you want to throw at it, I'm starting to look around like the Trey Sermon range, like if Trey Sermon's there, a Michael Carter if it's full PPR, if it's not, then he's really not. I'm not super excited about him unless it's full PPR. Then I'm looking at guys like AJ Dillon, Gus Edwards, just guys you can throw at the position that won't get you zeros. So that's kind of where when I come back to it. And then there are some guys that are gifts. So Darrell Henderson, he's another guy I just monitor in drafts. Like I don't go out of my way to get Darrell Henderson, but I want him when people let him fall to the 4th, 5th round because he's on a roster where no other running back has an NFL touch. He was a good prospect. He's in an offense that's ascending and due regression. I mean, the Rams were 11th in yards gained last year. They're 20th in touchdowns. This is a team that's gonna have scoring regression on the positive end to the mean. So I mean, I feel like the market didn't correct for Darrell Henderson enough. I have him as valued as a 3rd round player. So like I do monitor him. So if I'm going there, he's another guy I just look at and see if he falls, and we'll kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. Any interest in Xavier Jones and drafts right now?
Yeah, as a flyer? No, I mean, I have no pushback against anybody's listening at this because when we draft this way and, when you draft, we're throwing running back darts, I mean, you have to throw those. You just throw them in a pile, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he was a solid prospect, Xavier Jones. If you're a college DFS player, he was an expensive dude every week. At SMU. Like he was a profitable DFS guy. You had to pay up for Xavier Jones.
I think that final season he had like 23 touchdowns or something crazy like that.
Yeah,
like
you had to pay up for him. He was a big time buy he was in a freebie.
Yeah, he was crushing it that final season. I just put him in a recent article over on RotoViz, I believe. I kind of did a reverse engineering the draft article, and I threw him in there as a pick. I think in like the 17th or 18th round, the 16th or 17th round of draft. So yeah, I would love to take some shots on Xavier Jones over these next couple of weeks here.
And they already announced Darrell Henderson's not going to play in the preseason.
So we'll get a better look even to it, who those guys are going to be that we want to maybe keep an eye on.
McVay has been tried and true. He does not play starters in the preseason, and he already came out early and was like, we're not going to play him. So.
Hey, I mean, good for those people who have those early investments in Rams players, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, all that stuff. We are about to be on the clock again here. In terms of running back, are you interested in running backs here right now? We still obviously have.
Yeah, I would say with either one of these picks is fine. We're at 5 receivers. We could still definitely use more, especially in the way these underdog drafts go.
It's very wide receiver heavy.
I'm fine with any of the running backs that kind of correlate with we got. Connor correlates with Kyler. Tony Pollard could correlate with Kyler theoretically, and then I think Gus Edwards is just a decent guy because he's gonna get 8 to 12 touches probably a game. So we have some options to kind of dabble on some guys. I was looking at Zach Moss. I saw him in a couple picks ahead.
I know.
And then we still definitely need more wide receivers in these drafts because being in these drafts, like it gets ugly. Like the bottom, we're already at the point where like the bottom falls out.
It gets late early, I think is the phrase.
But Pittman's another guy. Like his ADP fell for kind of like really no reason. Like you already weren't drafting him as a starter for your team, and you overcompensated for Wentz being out. Like it seems weird that his ADP has dropped as much as it did.
Yeah, receiver or running back here. We got 18 seconds. I went Tony Pollard. We need one more player.
I'm good with any of these types of backs fit. I think all these guys fit. Drake, Edwards, Connor all fit. I would say let's lean. How about Kenyon Drake?
Let me get him in there. We just got it.
Nice. Just because we'll not because they're doing any kind of stack stuff, but I do just think their opening schedule is a little rough. We might get some pass catching equity out of him early on, and then obviously if you do get the injury down the line, but as terms of him just having like an individual role,
I I think too, and maybe you're of the same mindset. I think too that I think John Gruden listens to a lot of what people say about decisions that he makes with his roster and what are good decisions, what are bad decisions. And there may not have been an offseason signing more controversial than the Kenyon Drake signing. And John Gruden strikes me as that kind of guy who's going to be like looking to like prove people wrong with how he uses Kenyon Drake. He's going to show like, oh yeah, look, this guy's a pass catcher. Like, obviously, that's why I signed him to a 2-year, $11 million deal. Watch how he uses Kenyon Drake. I'm going to look like a genius. I don't know that's necessarily going to happen, but I like draft Kenyon Drake not because I love him, but because I think he's like kind of a bet on John Gruden's enormous ego for saying, I'm the smartest guy out here in the room. I'm going to use him in the way I said I'm going to use him, and it's going to pay off. And obviously, still, he has the upside if Josh Jacobs goes down. But I kind of like bet on Gruden's ego a little bit, I think, every time I make the Kenyon Drake pick. So I'm not against it. I don't know if you think that's a good way to go about approaches and drafts in terms of evaluating it.
We're all latching onto something at this with these running backs when you get in this area. But yeah, I actually like him a little bit more outright than Connor, who does go typically always ahead of him. I just don't know what kind of pass catching roles Connor going to have. He probably needs a full injury too to get up. Whereas I think Drake can get you more like bleeder games where like he can just plug a hole. You know what I mean? Like just he can plug a hole, and then if the upside were to open up, also believe he has a higher ceiling than if there were to be an actual injury.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because, I mean, he's going to maintain that pass-catching role that we already assume he's going to have, and he probably becomes the early down back as well. So.
And Kyler's still going to run at the goal line. I still believe that. Mm-hmm. Even all these quarterbacks, like I saw a lot of people say, well, Josh Allen got paid. The Bills aren't going to use him as much in the goal line. That's crazy. Like, if they were to reduce any of his carries, it would be, like, from the 20s. Because it's already been shown these last 2 years, and I did an article on this in the beginning of the offseason right after the year, because quarterback rushing touchdowns went bananas last year. There was 47 more quarterback rushing touchdowns than any other year in NFL history, 47 more than the year before, because teams have started to figure out you have to make teams play 11 on 11 defense at the goal line. Remember, all these teams that come out and just line up in these big packages and ramrod their running back and tell tales of defense, like this is where we're going to do at the football. But you have to defend the quarterback run in those spots. It's hard for defenses to do that, and that's why you see like Kyler last year be good at the goal line. That's why you see Josh Allen be good at the goal line. You need to make teams play 11 on 11 football in that area of the field, and having those guys that are able to do that now, with even getting a guy like Trey Lance and Justin Fields on the board, even Trevor Lawrence can do this. He's a guy that he could run inside the 10. He's a big guy too, 6'6". That is an advantageous from a coaching staff stance. So even if they do reduce like a guy like Josh Allen's rushing attempts, I believe it'll be like in the 20s, and they'll still use him as a goal line asset because it's smart football. It's just smart football.
Right. It's sharp football, right? You have to sneak it in there where you can, right? It's sharp football. Yeah. But I mean, and you made a good point too. If they were going to cut it down, why not cut it down in areas where he's less likely to score? Like you said, from the 20, like not as likely to find the goal line there, not as likely to score there. Like don't cut it down in areas where you have valuable points and you have the best option available to possibly get you those points. Cut it down where you can find other ways to get you into scoring range, and then let the elite players, the players who do what they do best, find their way into the end zone. We are about to be on the clock again here. Any wide receiver standing out? I will say this. You mentioned Kirk Cousins being toxic. We aren't going to need him now, but another toxic player who I've been drafting a little bit of is Colt Beasley in terms of his ADP slipping. Like I think he's probably going to play. I get him where I can. Is that a play you're interested at all, and would you look to go elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely fine with it. Obviously, we usually like him a little more in the full PPR just because he doesn't get that massive touchdown equity. But he's a guy that's, again, going to bail you out and get you those like plug weeks.
Yeah. I think that his ADP is slipping. I was looking earlier at it, and just based on his ADP, this was at an FFPC league, but based on his ADP, before all the crazy stuff started coming out, he was being drafted like I think close to like the top 120 players, and now he's falling. So he's falling because people are concerned he's not going to play. I think if you don't have that concern, you just buy that dip every time and hope that he actually plays, and he probably returns you tremendous value if he does play. So I'm big into Colt Beasley. As far as Colt Beasley, the fantasy football player goes. So I'm taking Colt Beasley wherever I can get him. We are about to be on the clock again. We got 6 wide receivers here. Probably don't need another tight end still. I just want to look and see. Irv is gone, so but that's fine. I don't think Irv is.
Yeah, so Irv went a couple picks ahead of us in that last round there.
Yeah. One more wide receiver. We'd be early on Kirk, but we would get a stack there if we wanted to do that. Is there?
I would be fine with either of the Cardinals guys if you have a preference. If you like Kirk or AJ Green, I would be fine with either of those guys to put with Kyler. Obviously, we can't get Hopkins. We can't turn back the clock and get him.
We can't.
But if you have a preference out of either one of those guys, I'm okay with that. Or Rondale's gone, I'm assuming, because Bateman's still up there.
Yeah, Rondale Moore is gone. I watched him.
We're in the 13th. Yeah, so we're moving.
Yeah, I mean, dude, we're a little bit early on Kirk here, but these wide receivers going off the board so early right now, I'm fine with kind of completing that stack and trying to get. We got some good correlation going on here, to be completely honest with you. So, Kirk isn't a guy we need to get into our lineup every single week, but if he goes off, if he has a good week, we get those points for Kyler and Kirk, and then if the Cowboys are trailing in that game and Tony Pollard happens to be seeing some work, we're really going to be cooking then. So. I'm fine with that pick there. I think we're good to go.
It's funny. We were swerving into building a Viking stack and ended up building Eagles and Cardinals kind of.
Life comes at you quick when you auto-draft Jalen Hurts unexpectedly. That's what I'll say. We got him a little bit early there, but yeah, I mean, shoot, I'm fine with this build so far. Anything that you think we need to be mindful of as we head into these last 5 picks or so, what we really need to be watching for to make sure we're not locking ourselves out of a good position too late in the draft, or make sure.
It was Nyheim Hines picked? Was Nyheim Hines picked? Is he out?
You know what? Nyheim Hines, I'm guessing, is gone. His ADP looks like
We probably should have flipped Hines and Kirk. We probably could have, but we know that happens when you're doing a show and you're on the clock.
I underestimated when I started this show in March. I underestimated how difficult it is for some of these people who do what they do every week with this to balance a content-driven show and a sound draft. It is very.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you're the one managing it, because I'm the worst, because I'm long-winded and I talk anyways. I can't do this. But Nyheim Hines would have been nice with the Waller Pittman stack too.
Yeah, Hines. I mean, that would have been a great pick. I don't even hate J.D. McKissick here. I hate that I said it out loud, because now someone might actually just decide to snipe him for the laughs. But I actually don't hate J.D. McKissick here. If he made it back to us, we obviously don't need quarterback. Do you feel like we need to get a tight end right now if we just look and see who's there?
No, we don't need to get a tight end outside of a dart throw at this point.
I would probably be leaning running back here for at least one of these next 2 picks, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Madison's off the board because we handcuff our own guy with that.
Right, we can't. We already made our bet at 102.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't need Alexander Madison to be successful based on how we started this draft. Are you against McKissick over some of these other guys? Knowing that we can't get Madison, and seeing where these ADPs are kind of setting up, like it's probably a little early for Darrington Evans, even though I do like him a lot. Gio Bernard is down here at a 180 ADP. But it wouldn't be way too early for him. How do you like Bernard compared to someone like J.D. McKissick?
My only problem, my hang up with Bernard is he needs 2 injuries probably instead of 1. Because he's not going to get like the rushing equity. Like when Mixon has gotten hurt, what's helped you is he's been, he was a terrible runner when he got to play last year, but it's helped that he's gotten all the carries, right? So if something happens to Ronald Jones, they can still use Fournette, and vice versa. If Fournette is happening to use Ronald Jones, Bernard probably needs both of those guys to get hurt, which is the problem. But I mean, we know that he's going to get he's going to fit in really well with a guy like Tom Brady in the passing game. But McKissick probably has a little more upside for the sake of, like, if Gibson were to go down, he probably has a little more juice where Gio needs 2 guys to get hurt.
Yeah. And keep in mind, too, even earlier, we were just talking about the possibility that maybe Gibson doesn't quite get the role that we're hoping he gets, but he still gets a little bit more. And if that's the case, I mean, the reason we're concerned about that is J.D. McKissick. So I think if we sometimes I think you have to draft even based on those concerns, realizing that if the guy you like doesn't get what he wants, who's the reason why, and can you take that guy?
Right.
One more pick here, and then we can get back into it a little bit. But anyone standing out to you?
No, not particularly, standing out. This is definitely an area of the draft. If I'm chasing wide receiver, I'm looking at like Deshaun Jackson. He used to go way later than this, obviously before Underdog got broken. Tevin Coleman is a guy I draft frequently in this area of the draft because, we're throwing these running back darts. He's playing with a fourth round, player. He's familiar with, the Mike LaFleur scheme. He comes from that. He's basically played his whole career in the Shanahanian offense from Atlanta to San Francisco. So I like him. He also could be a guy that gets the goal line carries. We don't know who. So the thing with Michael Carter too. The other thing is we don't know if he's going to be the touchdown scorer either, let alone this lead guy, because he's also another guy that's 205. Do they kind of work him in as the goal line carry? Do they bring Tevin Coleman in and get goal line carries? They could use Josh Adams at the goal line. We don't know yet. We don't know how that's going to work out, that type of split. Because a lot of times these coaches see these archetypes, these 200, 205 pound guys, and they pull them at that area of the field. We see it all the time. So, that's still something interesting too. So I've taken a lot of shots on Coleman too for those reasons. One, just being a veteran, familiar with the scheme. It's kind of open for him to potentially get a goal line role. Coleman also was a guy that, you remember 2 years ago, he still played well with the 49ers. Last year was just kind of a lost year for him. Yeah. But he played well during the Super Bowl year of the 49ers. Remember, he had a huge game against the Panthers. And then he got hurt after that, and then that was like the Mostert ascension. And then last year was just lost for him completely.
Yeah, last year.
So I don't think Tevin Coleman's completely dead as a player, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think he went. You made a good point. He played in the Shanahanian offense, and he went to the right team in terms of, the Jets head coach Robert Saleh bringing him on board with the Jets. I think that he, the best case scenario in terms of how we'd be looking to build if we went with Tevin Coleman is that he's a trusted back who he felt good enough to bring in and kind of handle some of those higher value touches where maybe you do need to move the chains or maybe you do need to punch one in. Coleman is hopefully a reliable player who he trusts enough to do that. I don't know if you saw the last pick. I went with John Brown just because I do like some of these running backs, but I thought that some of their ADPs, based on where we're at right now, probably called for some of them to fall. I like John Brown, again, with the correlation just with Waller. We got Michael Pittman in here. You had talked earlier about that Raiders and Colts game later on in the season. So I thought that was a nice opportunity to try to kind of jam in a little bit of correlation. Do you like John Brown as far as how the season is going and what we're kind of expecting out of the Raiders?
I don't have a strong lean either way. I will say, though, that John Brown is a guy that obviously was productive last year, and if we do not get production out of Bryan Edwards or Henry Ruggs, he's another guy that's a vet that can just step in and play. Like, again, we leave these guys for dead a lot, but these are guys that are proven players. Emanuel Sanders was like this early in the offseason, too. Now he jumped all those guys. Remember, he was going way after Beasley and Gabriel Davis, and now he's started
close to the last round.
He started to really climb up now because all the reports are he's going to be the number 2, and which you knew that when they signed him because of what they paid him. And John Brown, he did get a significant contract. It's not like he signed for like a minimum, but like these guys that can play, coaches like guys like John Brown. Like they like guys like Tevin Coleman. They like, you know what I mean? Like these guys end up finding the field more than we think. We hate them for fantasy because we don't think they usually roadblock a player we like more. But these guys get on the field, man. They do. Like, coaches are going to play these guys. Like you said, like with Tevin Coleman, like trusted touches when they get inside the 5. Like, they coaches say, like, yeah, I can trust this veteran player. But yeah, I like John Brown because he's a bet on either Ruggs or Edwards too, not performing to the level, everyone would like to see them kind of make year 2 jumps at.
Oh, yeah. And I think, too, if you really just think about it, like these are people like these other young Raiders wide receivers, and you really don't have a lot to go on for why you like them other than their profile and obviously their draft capital from last year. But in terms of production, John Brown has been there. John Brown has done it. So if you see an opportunity where either of these wide receivers can fail, which in theory they did not succeed at the level we expect them to last year, then how short of a leash do they get for a veteran like John Brown, who is playing on a team where John Gruden, even though he's on that 10-year contract, he might need John Brown to perform well for the sake of saving his job and winning some football games. At some point in time, you got to go with proven veterans to get you there. Tevin Coleman here?
I would say, this is the spot like where I would just like, I think we've pushed the ADP as far as we need to. There's no sense like in here you don't have to get all ADP value at this point either. Now we're in the point just like grab the dude that fits best. We'll take we'll have 2 picks left after this, so we'll take a tight end and
probably
one more running back.
One more running back, one more wide receiver. We probably could go one more running back, right? You don't think we need any more wide receivers here? We're pretty good with the
I would say this build looks pretty solid. probably could use one more. I'd say running back dart instead.
Yeah, I have one who I want to pitch to you, but I don't want to mention him too early. Cody Carpentier is tuned in, so I worry that
or is a guy you want to try to float through an extra round? Is that it?
Well, I can just come to you real quick. How do you feel about Anthony Mcfarland?
Yeah, I love it, man.
All right, we're gonna get Anthony Mcfarland. If he's not gone,
he's clearly jumped. He's clearly jumped Benny Snell in terms of Benny Snell. Obviously, the rumor came out today he's on the roster bubble.
Yep.
But McFarland was a guy thought it had some intrigue last. Remember, he played with Matt Canada at Maryland.
Yeah, he did.
So I mean, he definitely is familiar with a lot of things Matt Canada wants to do. He's got some receiving juice too. I don't know if you follow college a lot, but you're telling me earlier about college DFS earlier in the show. But like a couple years ago, man, Maryland played Ohio State, and
he rushed for like 200 yards or something like that.
Anthony McFarland went bananas that game.
Yeah, he did. There aren't a lot of bright spots for a lot of Maryland players during their time at Maryland, but Anthony McFarland went off that game. I know that Maryland didn't win. It was a very close game. They almost upset Ohio State, but I think
they blew a lead. Yeah,
I think McFarland rushed for close to 200 yards, if I'm not mistaken. It was a lot. I don't remember the exact line, but that was like without a doubt. Like if you had to put one game on Anthony McFarland's college resume that really stood out to you, it was that game against Ohio State. I'm going to try to pull it up real quick if I can find it, just because now you've got me curious.
But he was a guy that had some prospect intrigue. He went in the third round. Obviously, if something were to happen to Najee Harris, he could get an extended role. He appears to be the change of pace guy there too. The only thing you worry about is if Najee were to go down. And I know he scored a touchdown tonight in his preseason game. Like, would they get cute and use Kalen Ballage, inside the 5?
Right, yeah. I mean, you hope not. Anthony McFarland rushed for 21 times for 298 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I was wrong. He didn't almost rush for 200. He almost rushed for 300 yards. I mean,
and they had another back, I think, too, lighted up in that game too. That had a decent game in that same game.
They may have. My recall for that is pretty bad, but they very well may have. Ty Johnson was on that team. It may have been Ty Johnson.
Yeah, they had Javon Leake too. Was on
Javon
that team.
Leake. Yep. Yeah, it was an unexpected game that didn't quite end in Maryland's favor. But at that point in time in the season, and even now, I think as far as Maryland football goes, a loss like that at Ohio State is basically as good as a win for the Maryland Terrapins, because they just don't get a lot of those exciting moments. So I'm in on Anthony McFarland. He's a guy who I liked for dynasty leagues last year. I was kind of excited that he went to the Steelers just because I thought that there was an opportunity that, obviously this is looking back a while before Najee Harris even came close to being in the picture. But Anthony McFarland was a guy who I was kind of like, all right, like there's a path for him to perhaps see touches. Benny Snell is not that impressive of a player from an athleticism standpoint. James Conner kind of looking like he was already on the decline at that time. I thought McFarland kind of had a little bit of a 3-down type of upside to him because of his pass catching ability. And if he shows out as a runner, I thought he could have been a really good pick for the Steelers. Now, at the very least, it's optimistic that he's going to be the RB2 on that depth chart. And I think he could probably be a pretty good replacement for Najee Harris overall if Harris were to go down. So I don't hate it there. We are about to be on the clock, and we quite frankly
got to be a tight end. So
a tight end to get us out of here, and we can't be around. There can't be a bye week 8 tight end. So who's standing out to you here?
I mean, no one's standing out, obviously, at this point. But, I mean, I would say if I were to throw a dart, I mean, range of outcomes, I would say Ertz probably is a bet because he fits what we're doing. If he did get traded, which probably isn't happening now, I just think he's the guy. Like he fits what we got going on with these Eagles and Washington stack. We've got the Raiders and Colts stack. We probably, like I said, the one thing, if we could have reversed it, probably we could have gone Hines and Kirk back. We could have switched those guys and gotten a Hines in there, but it's fine. That's all right. Listen, if your worst pick,
this thing alive.
If your worst bit of regret is missing out on Nyheim Hines, I think you did okay still.
Yeah, I think so. I think we got most of this built out pretty solid here. So I'm absolutely fine with that. You read my mind with the Ertz pick. That's where I was leaning towards. I think just before we got on here, I even saw on Twitter that he'd scored a touchdown today. So maybe a little bit of a surprising narrative in terms of how that goes, and maybe Ertz surprising some people here. Real quick, you see this little feature here? Now you can actually name your draft. So
yeah.
we are going to go ahead and name this thing so we know how to track it. I got to go back and like literally watch all my other shows so I can see who the hell I drafted with all these other teams so I can properly attribute our winnings, to the inevitable winnings that are sure to come from the teams that were picked on the show. I want to make sure that I can properly split whoever I drafted the tournament winner with here. So I need to go back and rename all these teams. But we got yours in here. If this team wins, Reeves, I'll bring you your bag and we'll split it up evenly. So don't worry
right
about
on, man. Yeah, listen, we've got the Konami quarterbacks. We've got the anchor RB. We've got we've got the top tight end. We did a lot of things that, like, at least from a structural stance, I set out to do at the positions.
I would say the one thing I don't do a lot of is I don't draft 6 running backs, but I don't think there's anything wrong with drafting 6 running backs. I'm probably just getting a couple of backs a little bit earlier than I am when I'm getting my RB4 McKissick at 167. But I mean, like you said, structurally, that's big. I think we kind of know at this point in time that obviously players do matter, but your draft structure also matters a tremendous amount, and making sure you're building this out properly to give yourself a good chance at winning these leagues. I think that's what you and I had even talked about just a little bit ago the other day, was just being mindful of draft structure, making sure that we're getting our guys, but we're also building out proper structures and making our right bets and recognizing what high-end bets we're putting on players and how we should build around them with the assumption that we're drafting correctly and these teams are going to hit in the way that we want them to hit. That has personally been one of my biggest takeaways, I think, from best ball this year, is just really trying to be mindful of who I'm picking, when I'm picking them, and why I don't want to, invest an early pick elsewhere, realizing that an early pick in the same position probably means that my first pick was wrong and now I've wasted 2 spots. So little things like that I'm definitely trying to be mindful of. Anything that you would have done different in this draft? I know we talked about it a little bit, but now that we got a chance to actually get out of the room and settle on it, but anything you would have done differently before we get ourselves out of here?
No, not a whole lot. I mean, we had some things kind of just like roll our way. We had the Hurts auto pick when we weren't probably, I don't know who we could have taken around that point or who we were looking at. But honestly, the weird thing is like that could be like, it actually kind of turned out and turned our team in a different direction, because we had Devontae, we already had McLaurin, and then because we add McKissick, and then we add Zach Ertz. Who knows? Maybe if they don't get Watson and like Hurts plays well, he gets the whole year. This looks good. Because I mean, listen, when I set to build these teams, I'm looking for mobile quarterbacks, I'm looking for a bell cow running back, and I'm looking for a good tight end, and then I'm looking to jam a bunch of receivers around those things. Yeah, and we did that here. We did all 3 of that. You might not like a piece or anyone watch and say, like, I don't like that particular player. That's fine, but structurally and in terms of correlation, in terms of games for Week 17, if fingers crossed we would ever get there, we have some bullets in that chamber as well if any of those games would pop.
Yeah, we're getting there, Reeves. We're getting there. I didn't have you on the show to not get us there. So that is.
Listen, Kyler Pollard, Eagles, Washington, Colts, Raiders, all Week 17 matchups.
Yeah, Kirk. I mean, we've got it built in here. I guess the only thing that would really leave me reeling is if the Jalen Hurts play ended up being the big play for us, and then I'm looking at it, I'm just going, why is the best pick the one that we didn't mean to make? So that would have me questioning my whole process here. But either way, at the end of the day, $1 million is $1 million. I won't complain anyhow. Before we get out of here, remind everybody where they can find you at. Can they find you anywhere in particular this weekend? If I might as well go ahead and plug that a little bit here. Can they find you anywhere this weekend in particular? And then also where they can find you online.
I will be going to the expo. I'm like an hour north. I feel like it would be a waste of opportunity. Obviously, I understand anyone that is backed out or, it's got cold feet with what's going on.
Sure.
But I'm an hour north, so figure with that many people coming, it would be kind of a big miss on my part to not shake some hands. Now, we won't be shaking hands. We'll be fist bumping, but to not, you know what I mean, face or mask to mask meeting people and saying what's up to everybody. I did go 2 years ago, and it was a good time. I got to meet a couple people for the first time that I never met. So, if you're around this weekend in Canton, definitely, come introduce yourself, say what's up. Then all my work is still at sharpfootballanalysis.com. I've got almost 100 articles up this whole off season. We got a couple more weeks of work as we're, taking the test here. Everyone is taking their redrafts the next couple weeks here, so definitely if you want to join me, I'll be doing some chats with subscribers too for like pre-draft chats, so if people have got questions for their particular draft, things that are like too long to tweet, like I'm in this 6-point touchdown league, but it's also all this, all kinds of crazy things. And you want to ask me about a player because I get that a lot too. That's the best opportunity to ask me that kind of stuff. So definitely, definitely come join us. And the worksheet will be up this year, so everyone loves the worksheet. So come get that.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Awesome stuff out of Rich Hribar. Fun team that we got the draft today. You can catch him, like you said, at the Fantasy Football Expo, at Sharp Football Analysis on Twitter. I may be popping up at the Expo. It's still a little bit up in the air, but maybe I need to come out here and fist bump Reebs today or this weekend, and thank him for hopping on here and giving me my portion of the $1 million prize that we're about to win on this Best Ball Mania 2 draft over at Underdog Fantasy. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We will be back next week with a couple people from 4 for 4 to do another draft. We got Jen Akins and Chris Allen who are going to be joining us. We're going to triple up here and get another draft underway next weekend. So thanks again for tuning in. Big shout out to Lord Reeves for showing up here and doing this with us. Everyone stay safe at the Expo. If you're joining in, enjoy some preseason football for the rest of the night, and we will see you next week.